welcome you to the 2019 edition of the Human Resource Expo Africa HREA Summit. This year's theme is the art of employee engagement.
So this afternoon, I'll be sharing some insights and then having general conversations really around why organizational development is the strategic future of HR. So to get started, we would really be looking at these 6 things. So first, I'd want to look at what exactly is the transformative age. So we talk about, there's so many buzzwords now. VUCA, disruption, transformation, they're all those buzzwords we all through. But what exactly does it mean in terms of the context of work, in terms of what it means for us as HR practitioners, succeeding in the new realities? Then we'll also look at the organization as a whole. What exactly is this animal or organization or entity? What exactly is an organization? So we'll have some conversation around that. We'll also look at then HR and OD, because that really is the topic. We need to be able to tie the two together. And then we'll take a brief case study and finally close with how you should then go about being strategic when it comes to designing organizations. So that's really the focus. So I talked about transformative age. There's so much going on. Even before you begin to wrap your head around the reality, it has changed. If it's not technology, it's people. If it's not people, it's a new concept. If it's not a new concept, it's a new generation coming to work. So everything is affecting what we know as the normal. So the new normal is no longer normal. And so that means if we're going to talk about succeeding in organizations as HR practitioners, we must arm ourselves with the skills we need to succeed in that regard. So let's look at a few statistics. So I work for, obviously, a consulting firm. We do lots of research and studies. So it would be really weird to do this and not have data. So we'll just share some insights into why clearly the concept of developing organizations is really faced with a new reality when it comes to living in these our times. So 35% of Procter & Gamble's products, so you all know Procter & Gamble, that's one of the largest FMCG companies in the world. 35% of their products come from outside, the ideas behind it come from outside P&G. So that means that once upon a time, when you were designing the organization, you say, this is our budget, let's devote 60% to research and development, because research is how we'll keep abreast to consumer changes. But now, 35% of that idea is coming from people like you and I, who don't have their ID card. So that changes the concept of really what you should focus on, where you should put your hard-earned dollars when it comes to building an organization. And even for HR, it affects your recruitment plans. It affects your training plans. It affects every single thing you will do when you have a situation where over a third of what you will do as a business is coming from outside. Then the experts also say that by 2030, 2 billion jobs will be displaced on account of technology. And that also means that some of the jobs that exist today will no longer. So I personally think, for example, that there would be no profession called HR in about 3 years. I know it sounds very weird, right? Because I'm supposed to be an HR practitioner and I'm saying that. But really what it means is we would need to evolve a new set of skills as HR practitioners if we're going to survive the new normal, the new reality, the new organization. So for example, if you're not technology savvy, there's no way you'll be able to work in an organization where half the things we do are driven by tech. You would spend a lot of money in connecting your different locations and branches, and one of the ways you can be transformative is you are no longer limited by geographical boundaries. So if 2 billion jobs are going off on account of technology, then it means that some of the jobs some of us in this room would even go to work in don't even exist yet. I saw some quotes on Twitter 2 days ago saying something about the fact that our children would live up to as much as 80 years more than all of us in the room. And so in their whole life, they're expected to hold about more than 20 or so odd jobs. But yet a lot of us are still planning our organizations around work for me for 30 years, I'll give you a Rolex, I'll give you a deep freezer. Well, those are still the things we put forward. We still say, oh, A and B must have the same policy because A and B work for company A. So we're still looking at it in the old way. It's going to be a very disruptive future, a very, very different normal is really what we're faced with. Then, of course, by 2030, which is just barely a decade away, only 43% of the available workforce I beg your pardon, only 57% of the available workforce will be working full-time. So first, in Nigeria, think about what that means for us in Nigeria. First, we're complaining that our graduates are half-baked. I mean, I like to say I'm from the area of half-baked. So the people who are available now are not even entering the oven at all. So that means that for your training budget, when you would normally have hired people and put them to work, you are spending so much training and training and training, and then it gets worse. A lot of them are millennials. They like to do things in a different way. So even beyond the training, you probably also then have to address things that home training should have sorted out. Things like how you greet, what it is to understand boundaries, so it is a different reality we're faced with. So think of all these problems, and only 57%. So that means we're all fishing from the same waters where the fish is not exactly in good supply. So it cannot be the same approach to designing and developing our organizations. We have got to rethink everything we know around organization development, every single thing. And then 2025, which is just barely 6 years away, 75% of the workforce will be digital natives. Good thing is you can actually be a digital convert. So a digital native is someone who was born in the era of digital. And digital, by the way, is not internet, because a lot of people make that mistake. Digital is simply anything that is social, mobile, analytics, or cloud. So as an organization, you need to be able to connect with either your customers or your employees on those 4 platforms. So it's not enough that you have given them company email. I mean, think about 2002, 2003. It was such a big deal when a lot of organizations were just getting on board company accounts. So you know when they give you your name at something, you send email to someone and say, my company email account. So it was such a cool thing then. And then I still remember when I started working in Nigeria, we only had internet on one computer. So we'll wait in the evening, we'll go to the library and we'll take turns. And then we'll do refresh. But when I think about the beauty of the world these days, the world of work, it's so amazing. So if you're an organization that you are not leveraging technology, it means that of the 57% that are available to work full-time, you will not even get 5%. So these days, people are asking now, why do I need to journey into work? I should be able to connect with the business. I should be able to have my timesheets, my company email, work tools, everything on my phone. I mean, law firms will tell you that when you ask the average law firm in Nigeria to list their assets, they'll normally tell you they have this fancy library on 5 floors with all the hardback books. But the digital natives don't want those books. They mean nothing to them. So if you don't have an automated library, you will struggle. So the new reality is really that, look, if 75% of people who will be available to work in 6 years need a digital platform to work, those of us in the room who don't have those skills, we also have to learn how to work with them, because it would also be another source of frustration if we don't understand their way or their methods. So, if we say an organization is transformative, seeing that the world is becoming very complex, is requiring a new set of thinking and understanding to embrace it, what does it mean really then that we're transformative? Well, the first thing is we have to have a technology orientation. And some people say, no, my kind of business is not technology. We just take waste products and then we do story. Every single organization, every single role, every single job, every single idea has a technology interface. And if you haven't figured it out yet, it is your responsibility to try and identify it. Because ultimately, if we agree that in a few years, there will be only 57% who want full-time employment, you would need to restructure and reorganize work around the kind of animals that are available to work now, the kind of people who prefer to work in a certain way. And you know the funny thing, we haven't even finished dealing with the different personalities, the different types of behavior, the different type of work animal who doesn't want to work a 9 to 5. We're now dealing with the new reality of colleagues who are also robots. So we're getting ready for the era of cobots. So you know how you go home and you say, oh, Lola did this, Lola did that. You'll be talking about Android O2 did this, Android O2 did that. It's a new reality and it will happen. So you have got to have a technology orientation if you're talking about succeeding in a transformative age. Then, of course, you must have geographical diversity. So this doesn't necessarily mean you have an office in London, New York, and all of those things. It just means that your services, your products, your idea, your knowledge, your people can be contacted without a geographical barrier. And that's very easy to see. I say to some people, the minute you have a company website, the minute you have a LinkedIn account, a Twitter account, a Facebook account, you're already open to a diverse geographical audience. So that means that you can't say, oh, no, I was just dealing to, or speaking to a Nigerian. It doesn't matter anymore. Because the person who is in Nigeria today will wake up in New York tomorrow. So it's a borderless society. So we have to be able to experience the business, the organization, your services, without the restriction of a border. So that means that for us as HR professionals, our thinking has to be such that it expands beyond what is considered normal in your operating environment. I remember when I was doing the GPHR exam in 2012. You know, you people are enjoying now, eh? You have people doing certification classes, you can go for a lesson. In my time, there was no lesson, no. And I couldn't afford to pay this, so I had to do self-study. But I remember taking a particular course. There was the international, and I thought, when in my life will I ever need this knowledge of international tax in the EU, and taxation, whatever. I thought this is such a very unrealistic course. This was 2012. But today, that knowledge is very useful. When I get on calls with my colleagues across the continent, and they're saying, no, Nigeria, this doesn't work, what you have in the EU. So you need to have that mindset if you're going to survive. So it doesn't mean that, yes, you work for some manufacturing company in Agege, and you're just making your bleach, making your bread, and you're like, oh, we're Nigerian. We don't ever need to consider what happens outside the geography. And one day you wake up, you see the news that a multinational somewhere is making an approach for your company. So lo and behold, your reality has changed. You were once just a small company doing your business, and someone abroad saw your product, paid attention, and that's it, as they say, you are blow. So if as an HR practitioner, your mindset or your outlook does not consider the fact that geography should not limit or restrict what you do, then it will be very difficult to succeed in transformative age. I mean, the last speaker was talking about how once upon a time, wellness, benefit, all those things were things that happened in America or UK. But today, those are the realities. People are choosing not to work 9 to 5. Again, if you bear in mind that only 57% of people in a few years will want to hold full-time jobs. The question then is, all those our policies that are saying office hours are 8 to 5, why do we still have them? Why do we still need to be at our desks? And you know, if you restrict people being at their desks, you'd also have some cost savings. And so as HR practitioners, we can even demonstrate to the business how we're achieving cost savings as against being a cost center. It also means that we would have a market and customer focus. Now, this is a very interesting one. Most times when you ask people, oh, why did you set up this business? They tell you, well, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. But these days, if you're not a business that is existing in response to an identified need, you would struggle in terms of sustainability. A very good example is boutiques. Most people who own boutiques, they stock clothes in their sizes. I find it quite interesting. So, but you can, and somehow that's how we were running our businesses in those days, where, okay, the HR person just structured this for what works in this sector, in this economy, in this market. But today, you have got to put in not just your internal customers, but the expectations of the external customers. Oftentimes, when people complain that your service isn't great, it's not the person, or they, oh, I bought this product, this used to be this way, it has now changed. You didn't just buy a defective product. You obviously bought a defective experience, which has just translated down the line to what you're seeing in the product. It's like how sardines started from 4 fish, then 3 fish, then 2 fish, then 1 fish, sometimes no fish. So I've not seen no fish yet. So a lot of people say, okay, but what's going on? People are cheating, people are this. But I'm sure if we did a cause and effect analysis, you will find out that there's a lot more going on, and somehow it has translated to us not getting the experience of what we paid for. Same for the banks. You say, oh, this customer service isn't great, or they're great. You're really just buying the experience of the HR. It's the HR experience that has translated to the products and services we're going after. So oftentimes, people are having the conversation of how to move the business forward, our strategic plan, and most times the HR leader gets the invite last, when it really should be the reverse. Because you can have a great strategy, you can have a great product, you can have a great service, but ultimately you require what to bring it to life? Sorry, I didn't hear that. We require people to bring it to life, otherwise it stays an idea on paper. So the next time someone tells you, oh, HR is not this, ask them a question whether the organization would exist without people. So a transformative organization obviously would consider market and customer focus beyond what it is to exist in the form of a business. Now, then global markets, global products, global operations. I talked about this earlier on. You might exist in Lagos. You might be in Lagos. You might be in Agege or wherever. But your audience is largely not the Nigeria focus. And we're seeing a lot of mergers and acquisitions going on in Nigeria. A lot of multinationals are coming in here and they're buying up companies. Reason being that most of those markets are saturated. So this is like an emerging area. So forget all that story that our economy is not growing. Nigeria is still big business and we're going to be in big business for a while. So it means that the way the marketing guys are thinking of how to expand their products and services, we in HR also need to be thinking of how we'll shape up. Because for the organization to be transformative and to compete effectively, we have a great stake in that process. And I hope at the end of this session, we can collectively identify some of those. So let's go into the topic itself now, which is organization development. And I'd like to break down the words in that whole mouthful. So first, when you say to organize something, it really means to put something together in an orderly, functional, and structured whole. So it has to be orderly. So it can't just be that an organization happened because someone had an idea. In truth, most businesses start out like that. Someone had an idea, saw a need, they put their friends and family together, they solve the problem. But as the business gets bigger, if you don't pay attention to functional bits, to structured bits, to the experience people will get, you ultimately will limit where the organization can aspire to become. Then let's look at the organization. An organization is a deliberate creation comprising an individual activity or a group of activities interacting purposefully with one another and with their external environment towards defined goals and objectives. So you see, there's a relationship there. You can be great, you can be focused on internal environment, but you have to pay particular attention to what happens in your operational environment. So I go back to my introduction. You're a great HR leader, your people are motivated, they're super excited, but you have lost track of the kind of people you've been hiring over the years. And so that means you've lost track of what becomes motivational. You're still offering them a deep freezer at 10, a gold watch at 25, and a career for life at 35. But people keep going. You keep increasing salary. You keep adding more to the HMO, but people are staying. It could be that you've done all of these things right internally, but you have lost track of what is happening externally. So for you to really succeed in the transformative, for you to really be strategic, it goes beyond all the things we were told good HR should be. It's a lot more economical planning than really even doing the HR. And then, of course, let's look at OD, which is the process and the structure in which an organization is created, maintained. It is the process of coordinating the structural elements of an organization in the most appropriate manner. So that sentence is say in the right manner or in the wrong manner, because there actually is no right way to design an organization, by the way. It has to be appropriate for what your culture is, for what your plan is, for what your budget is, for what your idea is. And sometimes we consultants are responsible for a lot of the problems organizations face. We tend to give a one-size-fits-all approach. But over the years, you realize that one-size-fits-all does not work. I mean, the previous speaker said it a few times. You must pick what works for you. You must pick what works for you. So the fact that, and not say sometimes, I tell my clients, I need the fees, yes, please, come and do compensation survey. Come and do employee attitude survey. But at the end of the day, you must understand whether and what you want to do with it, if it is appropriate and applicable. So not everything that happens in one organization is good for you, even in your sector. Hence the emphasis on appropriate. Not accurate, not right, but appropriate. So it's a very, very deliberate attempt to figure out what works in terms of as a business. So let's look at the evolution of organizations, because obviously there's a process. Now, remember we said it's a deliberate coordination of different structural bits. Well, the first idea of what an organization is or should be started really about the 1900s. And what was the major focus then? We had just come out of the war. Henry Ford was already doing his black cars. I mean, he'll tell you you can have any color you want so long as it is black. That's all you had. But it was really an attempt to get people together to win people over, because the world had just come out of the war. There was a depression going on. So things were really tight. So the first idea of a formal organization was to give people that sense of wholeness. The fact that an organization, so you put people together to develop products. It was very, very task-focused. It was all about, I need 10 men to produce 10 cars over 10 hours. There wasn't really a lot of, oh, I don't feel so well today. Oh, I want work-life balance. Oh, I think, all of those things didn't matter back in the day. You had just come out of a war. You were happy you had money to eat. You were even happy you had a job. So it was very, very mechanical, very task-focused. The individual was the last. Thinking about what they felt, who they were, was actually the last in terms of the process. Then phase 2 or type 2 was really when we then got to about 1960. At that point, a lot of African countries were getting independence. Unionism was on the rise. At least by 1945, we got our union in Nigeria, Pa Michael Imoju. And the whole point was, well, for so long they've been treating us like cattle, like factors of production. But we're human beings, we have feelings. And I realized that they're paying this person more. So let's come together and argue our way. Let's argue for a standardized approach to treating us as employees. So of course, we then empowered our needs, our care, our concerns into the hands of a few to fight for us. But as you well know, no two individuals are the same. So our needs cannot be the same. Our expectations cannot be the same. So obviously that rolled us quickly into type 3, where we now started seeing some sense of discussions around equity pay, quality of life. So a lot of the conversations we're having today, there's actually nothing new under the sun. That's interesting. I just got told I have 15 minutes. Very different from what I was told. No problems. Okay, and then of course, by the 2000s, where we're talking work-life balance, we're talking wellness, depression, like the last topic you just had, which addressed those issues. So I'd like to move on. Okay, so two types of organizations would be really the mechanist, which is really the old type, where everything is hierarchical. You take instructions from the top, and not much upward thinking happens. And then organic, where you now have collaboration. It's really more few rules. People are free to be themselves. So this is now like the modern organization. Or really, this is a recommendation. Because we have different people, we have different needs, people should be a bit free to be who they are at work and ask for what they want at work. So HR and OD, because really that's what this topic is about. When it comes to globalization, we're seeing a lot of demographic shifts. We're seeing a lot of generations at work. So there's a lot of pressure on us as HR practitioners to do things differently. And so, no longer are we hire fire. It's no longer personnel. There's less emphasis on the dress code reputation, but to more strategic discussions around really how should the organization transform? How can the organization keep abreast of all the changes with technology? How can we make sure we're keeping our people longer? How can we really have employees who are happy to work with us and not using us as stopgap for the next person? So that is now really the agenda HR practitioners are faced with. So, what is our future? Well, so we've gone through the past, all of things I described earlier on. Our future now is really, we should enable and empower and engage. So it's not enough to say, I want to know what my benefits are. I work to HR. I should be able to tell HR, say, you know what, I am getting tired. I think I'd like to reduce the hours I work. And it shouldn't matter that we don't have a policy or that's not what you're doing for someone on my level. So those kind of conversations are no longer applicable. We should now rely heavily on technology because guess what? We have more digital natives at work. We have more needs to connect digitally, so it's important to make sure technology is at the heart of what we do. We also need to leverage employee experience as against balance sheet experience. So oftentimes we say cost, OPEX. It really should be the experience. Because you might find out that you're able to generate a better experience for less than all the monies you're spending to play catch up with your peers and you're not getting the results you need. You should also leverage data. That goes without saying. The person who you hired 5 years ago, the needs will change. And so the ideas behind how we practice HR should also change to make sure that there's a balance in what our people want and what they need. We also need to take a seat at the table. Well, actually, we need to be on the table. So, the conversation started from HR needs a seat at the table. HR needs to get invited to the table. Then HR needs to keep a seat at the table. Then HR needs to get a seat on the table. And I'm saying that when HR is not on the table, there should be no meeting. So that's where we really need to get to in terms of being our approach or how we add value. But of course, the only way we can do that is if we learn the language of business, which is speaking with data, financial terms that the CFO, the CEO will understand. So I challenge a lot of us in the room. Our HR reports, how are we doing them? Oftentimes, we get criticized for writing fluid reports. Our reports are full of stories, A left and B left and C left. But A left and B left and C left, has it affected engagement? Have we experienced churn in customer service? So those are the kind of things we need to aspire towards as HR practitioners in terms of how we speak, how we work, how we report value. So even though you are not issuing invoices to get credit or cash, you should be able to quantify how the activities of your function are delivering delivering financial returns. Now, what are some of the hallmarks of OD when you have strategic HR in place? One is the fact that there's open communication. So people should be free to then say their views, speak their mind, even though you're not jollof rice, right? So you're not making sure, wanting everybody to like you. but you're making sure that people have a platform to say what is important to them. Because HR doesn't always have the answers and the ideas, by the way. It could come from someone else in the organization. So there needs to be enough platforms where people can share their ideas. You also need to leverage relationships as against a task-focused relationship. So most people will tell you, oh, HR hasn't done appraisal, HR hasn't done this, HR hasn't done that. And tell most of my clients, that is hardly HR's role. HR has just one role, and that role is to have or maintain strong relationships with the line managers in the organization. That's all. You don't have any other responsibility. And that's why I say that in 3 years, there really will be no formal career called HR per se, because line managers will now become the people driving the organization. So our skills will need to be different. We would then need to really mature into working and communicating strategically. You also need to focus on ethics. So remember, I have not said policy, because policies sometimes can be like handcuffs, where you say, no, it's black or white, it can't be gray, it can't be a shade of blue, and some people are colorblind. Ethical practice means that there's a strong understanding and respect on what is considered right and just. So that means that some of the actions we will take as HR practitioners are not necessarily in the textbook, and it's okay to be that way. Then, of course, we have to consider people management. So it's not HR, but people management. So that means you respect people for the individuality they bring to the table, for the diversity they bring to the table, for the ideas, for the different generations. So I ask one question, for example, why must we all have HMO? What you're supposed to give me is healthcare cover, and it can be in different ways. Because a lot of people have these things that people don't use. And if you ask, why did you do it? They'll say, because the next person in the industry is doing it. Or people say, let's increase salaries. Why are you increasing salaries? Has there been something that happened in the business that you think that the only reward you can give is financial? I mean, one of the WhatsApp groups I belong to, there was a conversation yesterday. Someone wanted to know what you could give for an employee who just got voted Employee of the Year. And I said, look, is it only cash that you can give? There's so many other things you can do that would enhance the psychological experience. I remember my days at Philips Consulting as an associate. I had done something, and my CEO wrote me a letter, handwritten letter, which he signed. I still have that letter, and it means so much. Because guess what? If he gave me money, I would have spent it and done God knows what with it. It would have gone. So we've got to challenge how we manage people and stop seeing people as one physical item who have unique needs and expectations. We also need to make sure we demonstrate business acumen. You can be the best HR practitioner, but if you don't understand where the shoe is pinching the MD, you will not be effective. So you've got to understand the language. You've got to understand how you report your activities in ways that speak to what the business considers important. Then you've got to have a global awareness. I talked about that already. Consultation. So your role is not to open the rule book and say, according to our policy, it is. You should engage with people and actually have a situation where you can get contrary views and opinions to take a position. Okay, so I want us to just look at a case study quickly in rounding off. So this is an org structure of an actual client of mine back in the day. And as you can see from that structure, the family members are the board of directors. And in terms of reporting relationship, you can see that all the boxes go straight into the managing director. 90% of the staff are contract. Now, a few facts about this organization. They have interest in oil and gas, construction and dredging. They had an annual turnover in 2013 at the time of 9 billion, which was a lot of money. Sorry? You can't hear anymore. Okay. Sorry, can't. The volume of the other room. So it's... Okay, thank you. So as of 2013, they made 9 billion. And this is actually the reporting structure. So here you can see, this is the group managing director, the managing director. Then there's finance and all of those functions. Then all staff who are contract have dotted relationships to the group managing director and to the managing director. A few facts. What are some of, let's just have 3 people comment. What do you think is the reality of this organization? They're very profitable, by the way, if you go by straight accounting definition. At 90% contracts are making 9 billion. They were returning about $44,000 or so per employee in terms of ROI back in 2013. But what are some of the commonalities, or what do you think this organization would, or what are some observable features? Let's just have 3 people. Okay, the span of control is too wide, which means that things will get lost or might get lost in translation, or nothing gets done. Then they have a group managing director and a managing director. And they have a board of directors made up of family members. So clearly, this is a mom and pop business. But is mom and pop bad? There's nothing wrong with mom and pop. Remember the definition of organization development, the appropriate structure, not the applicable structure or the right or wrong. So a lot of people go, it's made of family members, so it can't be. No, there's absolutely nothing wrong. At the end of the day, it is what works for you, but it has to then tick all those boxes on the previous slide I showed you, what is considered acceptable. Now, obviously for this company, one of the challenges they had, as you rightly identified, it was not clear who was giving who direction. All these other guys in the boxes there, they also felt undermined. But if you looked at it in terms of accounting or financial translation, you said they're doing very well because the ROI per employee is very high. But what then happened was this company, they had a few government contracts where they built roads and things around Nigeria. A lot of their projects failed. A lot of their projects, such that at some point they had to be called to even attend one of those tribunals where you explain what you did. Because oftentimes, the impact of the experience of the way an organization has been designed, it's got nothing to do with what you can see. But it's really around how the organization communicates. So while there's nothing wrong with mom and pop, it's important to pay attention to the following things. So family businesses are on the rise. Virtually every organization in the world started as a family business before it became something else. So let's stop knocking down family businesses as not an appropriate way to develop an organization. But let's put in place ethical, let's put in place relationships, let's focus on people management. Those things will make it worth our while. We also then need to consider the national or cultural boundaries. The truth is, it is a very subjective but very, very strong influence on the way an organization is structured. An organization in the north, headquartered in the north, will have a different persona than the branch in Lagos. But what we then need to make sure is, rather than focus on changing the entire organization to fit a textbook definition, we've got to focus on what instances can be preserved or what makes that organization unique while finding a good common ground. And the good common ground will be those basics I had showed you earlier on. We also then need to pay particular attention to multiple generations at work. Increasingly and unfortunately in Nigeria, we have a bad practice of trading experience for diapers. There seems to be that preference, young means better, young means focused. Whereas countries like Canada and Korea, they have abolished retirement age because they realize that people have the capabilities to be productive till they drop dead. So it also means we then need to revisit some of our policies around retirement and all of those. Why is retirement age 60, by the way? I know of so many 60-year-olds that have better work ethics than the average 20-year-old. So we also need to find a balance. An organization that has too many young people, it might be great in terms of being able to do certain things. But what you know for a fact is those gender or generation also prefer or would benefit from some reverse mentoring. So we need to consider the way we have demographically structured our organizations to make sure we're strategic. So let's not be quick to say the first thing to do is, let's ask the old people to go. Because old is living with the experience of the company, old is living with the knowledge of how the company has been developed, old is living with the trust that your customers have. And so it's important to consider that balance. We also then need to look at corporate governance. These days, you cannot be talking about being strategic if you're not following the laws of the land and the laws of running businesses properly. So even though you're a family business, still have instances where you comply with what is considered ethical practice, corporate governance principles. And thank God for Google, those things are available. Then the Canada effect. I happen to be one of those people who do not think that Canada is bad, but a lot of people seem to say it's bad, it's bad, it's bad. I always ask some people, the truth is you cannot stop people from migrating. Because man naturally is nomadic. We're nomadic in terms of how we are. We like to change positions. So who says that your people going to Canada can actually not be ambassadors of the organization? Who says they cannot take franchises and start when they go? Because a lot of people need soft landing when they travel. And when you do that, the connection is forever actually. It's more emotional than anything else. And then we also say, okay, you are leaving, and then we begin to treat them nasty. Why don't we then use that instance to put in place an employee referral scheme? So when you are leaving, you bring your replacement. The way we do it in informal organizations, apprenticeship, once you are doing your freedom, you bring someone else to start. I have in mind, thank you. And then, of course, we also need to be innovative. Why are we rewarding people the same? Some people don't encourage anybody to buy their leave back. But some people actually want to work longer hours to get more leave days. But why restrict everybody to 20 days for minimum junior or middle level, and then 25 for executive? And then why do we need to pay people guaranteed it has to be this way in cash? People want different things now, and the era of the work we're in, or the era of work now is such that it is now going to be based on customization. So we need to rethink a lot of the things in our employee handbook, a lot of the things that we put forward out there as our employer value proposition. It cannot be the fact that you're offering me, like consulting firms, law firms, they tell you, oh, join us in 10 years, we'll make you a partner, a whatever. In today's world, 2 years is the new 10 years. So if you have an org structure that is so long, and I join today, I'm thinking, so at what point will I get to the top? Knowing fully well that millennials want to be empowered very early. It's going to be a challenge in terms of keeping people, and we've already established that talent is scarce and hard to come by. So we've got to rethink how we do things. And it doesn't mean that it's working in America means it would work for us in Nigeria. Very important to localize. So take the global insights, the global knowledge, but make sure you localize it based on the practices that are considered ethical and for corporate governance. So in just closing, I'd like to quickly run through 10 commandments of org development. One is the roles. Because we started out by defining an organization as a formal entity, a structured entity, people must have roles. If you get to a point where it's not clear what certain people in the organization are doing, then it's time to evaluate the jobs you have available. But people must have roles, no matter how small. Even if it's that they're washing toilets, it's a role. And you must be able to see how that role stacks up. There needs to be resources. And resources is not just financial, it's also human capital. So you've got to have the right kind of people to deliver the right kind of jobs. So that also helps you remain sustainable. It helps you satisfy your clientele. We also need to have capabilities. So you can have roles, you can have resources, but people need to have responsibility for delivering something. They must be capable of something. And that is what should influence your training and development track. Not that, oh, everybody's doing training on effective public speaking and you're sending everybody there. It has to stack up to something. Then there needs to be a structure. The structure is simply how we communicate. It tells us who is responsible, who is accountable, who is to be consulted for what. A structure is absolutely necessary. So some people don't know we're young, we don't want hierarchy here, we want everybody to know it's flat. At the end of the day, the bulk still needs to stop on someone's table. So structure, even in heaven, there's hierarchy. Then governance, I talked about that earlier on, infrastructure. So beyond all the niceties, there has to be things to enable us to do the work. Physical environment, once upon a time, was not an indices for employer value proposition, but these days it is. The lighting of the office, the structure, how comfortable my table is, all of those things matter. And those are things people are checking when it comes to their employment experience. Then we have to have a way of assessing performance, because that obviously tells us that we've remained committed to what it is and who we say we are. So it's important we keep checking that we're doing everything to address that. Then culture. I think I've talked earlier on about the fact that there is not one size fits all when it comes to culture. But it's absolutely important to make sure we're developing our organizations in mind of what works for us. So the culture or the feel of our branch in Kano could be different from our feel in Lagos. But at the end of the day, there must be that common thread that holds us together, and that's what we need to find. So we should not say, oh, everybody's jumping on the, everybody's doing dress down Fridays. Yeah, dress down is great, it's nice. But you need to understand whether it would work for your type of business and then the kind of image or kind of culture you're trying to project. And then we need to have talent. So there's a difference between human resources and talent. A huge one, even though we use the terms interchangeably. Talent really is the one that is giving you what you're looking for. You can say it's the 20% deriving the 80% of your value, while your human resources is everyone else. They all have a role to play, but talent obviously are the ones that when it comes to your succession program, when it comes to investments on L&D, when it comes to exposure, you would focus on what you consider your talent. However, everybody starts out, or we should start out assuming that everyone is talent. I like to say that because people are not bad on themselves. They're bad as a result of the experiences they've had. And people don't even leave bad organizations, by the way. They leave bad managers, HR inclusive. And then finally, we need to have processes. There has to be a laid down way of doing things. We know we start from A and we end in B, because if we're doing things as we like, then it's just going to be one big scattered environment. So I've had to rush through it because my time got cut short, different, but I hope we've been able at least to impact some knowledge. So I'd like us to, if there are any questions or comments, let's do that within the time I have left.
Thank you for your presentation. You almost touched the aspects I really want to ask my question on, and this is the issue of a flat structure. And people have been saying that, yeah, organizational structure is important, But the fact is that it also hinders initiative by people. So I just want you to reconcile the two. On one hand, we're saying it's important to have a structure, to respect span of control and all of that. And here, some other organizations that are talking about flat structure and also saying that, okay, that promotes communication better than the hierarchical structure and the rest of things. So I just want you to reconcile the two. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and that's a great question. So I started out by talking about how organizations are made, and I talked about a few soft issues. So the representation of boxes is just one outcome, but there's so many things that lead to that. So you can actually have a flat structure, but in terms of how things are done, it is super bureaucratic. So it is important first to start from the why. What exactly are you trying to achieve? Now, for some sectors, naturally, they are flat structure, like the telcos. They don't have a very tall hierarchical structure. But what it also means is that they run a role-based system. So I joined today as, let's say, marketing analyst. I could be a marketing analyst for 20 years. Now, what will change is that my salary will grow, the role will be expanding, my capabilities will expand, but that's what I've chosen to call myself. But it doesn't mean that when there's something to do in marketing, I'll say, oh, because we're flat, I'll go and take the decision and not consult the marketing director. So there is still hierarchy, there's still respect, there's still but ultimately it's your culture that drives it. Now what I say to people who are trying to find the balance is, then operate a matrix structure. So a matrix structure allows you combine different things. So if you have an organization that has a lot of millennials like to come to responsibility early. They want to be known, they want to make CEO from 5 years graduation. So you should run or design your organization in such a way that there can be different projects that leadership and responsibility can rotate. If you're a public sector organization, there is no point having a conversation about flat structure because your culture is such that you cannot be flat. However, you can be efficient, leveraging the other things we talked about, technology, making sure people are capable to do their jobs, making sure there are processes to guide how things should be done. So flat structure is another buzzword, but you can actually be flat and be super inefficient and bureaucratic because of the nature of the individuals there. So the question is, start from your why. What is your why? What are you trying to accomplish? And then understand the data that is telling you what will work for your people. If you're a new business, if you're an entrepreneurial firm, there's no way you will be flat. Because at the end of the day, the owner of the business starts out wanting to see everything. And then as you mature, as you hire more competent people, as your operations expand, you begin to cede some of the responsibilities and then it changes. So while it's a good thing to follow the bandwagon, but you must always answer the why. What is the why behind what you're trying to do? And if it's not broken, really, don't fix it. Hence my example of the family business. They were making money, but it just so happened that there were some operational efficiencies that had to be resolved. Okay? I've been told time is up. Any other question or comments? And then we can just round up. Okay, yes.
Okay, hi Lola. Hi. Very great presentation and very insightful.
Thank you.
The only part I have a little issue with is the fact that you mentioned that in 3 years, HR will be extinct. So I don't think it would be extinct. I just think that, there would be a redesign of the role.
I agree with you, absolutely. So, let me rephrase that then. So HR as we know it will be extinct. So you won't be able to be an HR manager that does not have extra skills. It will be difficult. It's like the way people were confidential secretaries back in the day. But today, those jobs no longer exist because everyone's has their own digital assistant. So yes, thanks for that, Joke. So not in the form, but the form will change. Okay? So I'd like to thank you very much for giving me the audience to share some thoughts. And I wish you all the best the rest of the session. Thank you.